Hello and welcome to Undrafted, a dynasty game theory podcast brought to you by the Undroppables. I am your host, Scott Belanger, a.k.a. Jax Falcone. You can find me on Twitter at Dino Game Theory. This is episode 29, and let's roll, baby. We are in the midst of the free agency frenzy, and quite frankly, I love it. It's so much fun. So much is changing, and quite honestly, sometimes it's tough to keep track. But with me today is someone who I could only dream of chopping it up with. One of the guys I've looked up to in this space since I've even known about it. So I don't exactly get starstruck, but I do recognize when I am among true greatness, and today is a day like that. So I'd like to welcome to the pod the great Evan Silva. You can find Evan on Twitter at Evan Silva. Be sure to check out his awesome website, establishtheRun.com, and his podcast with Adam Levitan, also called Establish the Run. Evan Silva, what is up?
What's up, Jax? I'm a big fan of yours as well. I have been for a couple of years. You know, you have always been one of the, like the smarter guys or the more like observant guys, I thought, on fantasy Twitter. So, you've always kind of stuck out to me. So it's cool to now be able to sit down and do a podcast with you and discuss what has been so far a pretty wild and fast-flowing and aggressive free agency period. We kind of heard that it was going to be like this, but I thought it would be a little bit more of a slow trickle, but it's been info packed.
Well, that's the pod, everybody. Evan came on and complimented me, so that's going to be all for the. No, I'm just joking. You're absolutely right. I mean, everybody kind of predicted that it was going to be, fast, and our guy, Dan AWL Sabermetrics, who kind of does our contracts for us, was warning us that the offensive lineman movement was going to be huge, and so far that's been true, and we're going to get to that for sure. But that's something that I think down the line is something worth looking at to see which teams actually improved or really fell flat, on the fronts, because that's where the game's won and lost. But we're not going to talk too much offensive line. I don't think that people want to hear us talk about guards. But we are going to hit the big stuff. And kind of one of the big things that, obviously has been dominating the news for more than one reason, but I think we want to look at it from, just sort of the ramifications is this Deshaun Watson situation. Legality stuff aside, Evan, I mean, let's look at what that actually means going forward, which is like, I look, this was been my take, is that, Deshaun Watson had no leverage other than in the court of public opinion. And now he doesn't have that. And this, this Houston franchise, you have famously put on blast, and they're maybe the stone worst. But what does all this mean? I mean, this is just an absolute mess. What happens next?
I think it's a mystery, because this lawsuit issue is going to need to be sorted out. I mean, this is a massive move, franchise-altering move for any team that would be trying to acquire Deshaun Watson. He's got a big contract. He plays the most important position in all of pro sports. Owners are going to be involved in a move like this, and
right.
Owners are always worried about PR and all that. So this is going to cause a delay in any Deshaun Watson movement. I don't know if it increases the likelihood that he returns to Houston. I think the lawsuit situation has to get sorted out before there's any movement. There have been several teams rumored to be interested in him. I think the Jets and the Dolphins clearly have enough ammunition to go get him. The Broncos, the 49ers, and the Panthers have even the Patriots a little bit have been rumored to be in that mix. But it has become a highly unpredictable situation due to the lawsuit issue.
Yeah, I mean, even due to the fact that Houston is basically the worst run franchise in football would also make them unpredictable. I talk with some of, my friends and coworkers at the Undroppables, and we'll talk about like what would be reasonable for, Houston to do. And of course, I always say, well, can we bank on them being reasonable even once? I mean, they've never proven to be reasonable in any decision they've made. Why would we think they'd start now?
Right. And they're also a team that is extremely concerned at this point with PR. I mean, they literally released J.J. Watt without even trying to get anything for him on the trade market, just so they could get, rap sheet to tweet about how classy they were.
They were classy.
And the Texans,
very
I
classy
guess,
move. No, I'm only teasing, man. Very
yeah.
classy. Very classy. I mean, you can't get more classy than releasing a valuable asset for nothing, just to show your franchise you care.
I mean, I guess that's what they're thinking. I mean, they're discombobulated right now. We don't know if Jack Easterby's running the show. We don't know if it's Nick Caserio. I mean, John Daigle of Roto World put up a graphic of all the players that the Texans have signed this offseason. It's just, with all due respect, it's a bunch of garbage. I mean, they've bought a bunch of players that just aren't very good. And I guess now it's being viewed that Tyrod Taylor would be their starting quarterback if they move on from Deshaun Watson. I mean, they're like a candidate to go 0-16 if that happens.
Yeah, with no draft picks. Yeah, stay classy.
Yeah, with no draft picks, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. What a plan. I don't know if you heard my last show, but I called them they're like the orphan team in your dynasty league that has nothing, no draft picks, no future, no team. You can't even give the team away for free on Twitter. That's the Houston Texans right now. But they do have Deshaun Watson. Their only good, piece. They're only saving grace, and that is turning as ugly as it could possibly be. So I don't know, man. It's really, I'm ready for him to be traded is what I'm hoping for, obviously.
Yeah. And I mean, seriously, like, they are so bereft of talent and assets that at this point, I mean, I think it's almost in their best interest to trade Deshaun Watson, because at least that way they could get some assets. They're not going to win. I mean, they're so bad that they have a top 5 quarterback in the league and they still can't win with them.
Right.
I mean, what they should have done is they should have just done a full clean sweep tank, get what they could for J.J. Watt, trade Bradley Roby, trade Deshaun Watson, just get anything that they could get for all these guys, and do like a multi-year tank, and try to get compile draft picks and just absorb the losses, and almost do like what the Astros did, actually, also of Houston. But I mean, I don't know, they have no direction right now.
They're going to need someone in the dugout clapping once or twice, whether it's a run or a pass. So I agree. They should do exactly what the Astros did and cheat. That's their only chance of winning. So good luck. But moving on, that is just an absolute train wreck. And I say we just kind of keep that theme rolling. And I'm going to ask you, what the hell is going on in Seattle? I mean, if you're going to trade Russell Wilson, then, I mean, wouldn't you be open to trading him? And if not, why would you? What the hell is going on? Like, in other words, if you're trading him, trade him. If not, say we're not trading him. But the word came out that Chicago offered 3 first-round picks, 2 quote-unquote good players. I don't even know what that means. But and they said no. What the hell is all that?
Well, I mean, I don't think that Seattle's going to trade Russell Wilson. There's obviously been some friction there between the Seattle front office and Russell Wilson, based on, I mean, Seattle treats Pete Carroll as the most important figure in its organization, not its quarterback, and not the well-being of its quarterback. And that's just the direction that they've decided to go. They moved on from Brian Schottenheimer, who I thought did a pretty nice job, at least in the first half of last year, of scheming offense. They gave Pete Carroll an extension until he's like 80 years old. And, they are continuing to build in the likeness of Pete Carroll, not in the likeness of at least what Russell Wilson wants and what we saw be so successful for them in the first half of last season.
Absolutely. I think what they did is they heard through the grapevine that you're smart, and they were like, what's this guy's website? They heard it was Established the Run and just followed that. That's what they did.
I guess so.
That's what they're doing. I mean, yeah, go ahead.
But no, I mean, they've been pretty quiet so far in free agency. But I mean, I think at the end of the day, they're not going to move on from Russell Wilson. But they're going to keep him, sort of under wraps with this run the ball mindset.
Yeah, certainly. Well, we know that obviously establishing the run is what wins in football. I think the data's been out. The more times you kneel down, so I think there's a correlation there. They're going to figure it out eventually. A couple kneel downs to start off the game, that's the surefire way to win it. We know that. But moving on.
Exactly.
Moving on to, I think you did two of my favorite podcasts of all time. Okay, so the two takedowns, the big blue bubble, and then last year taking down the Texans. And you had asked who should I take down this year, and I was like, you should just do the Texans again. Was my response, because they need a double dip, and turns out that was correct. But you are moving on, and you're going to do the pod on the Bears. I don't think I'm spoiling anything. I think you tweeted it out. So really excited to hear you sort of lambaste the Bears, and I don't want to step on that pod too much, but I'm sure you've got enough fire in that flamethrower. So perhaps maybe just a few cocktails get thrown here. What the hell were the Bears doing? What are the Bears doing? Why did they? They're up against the cap. They don't have a quarterback. Allen Robinson. They tag him. He's unhappy. They have Nick Foles and Mitch Trubisky. They could have picked up Mitch Trubisky's fifth-year option. Instead, now they bring in Andy Dalton, who seems like literally like a lateral move at best, but costing them more money. I have no clue what the hell they're doing. Do you have any idea what they're doing?
They're just missing out on their preferred targets. And one of the trademark characteristics, I think, of well-run organizations, that they can go out and get their guy. At the Bears went it. They tried to get Russell Wilson. They wound up with Andy Dalton. They tried to go get Trent. They tried to go get Trent Williams. They wound up re-signing Jermaine Ifedi. They're just not executing. And I mean, I don't blame them. I mean, they're a quarterbackless team. They're also a team who the people that are making decisions there are like fighting for their jobs. They're
right.
Not like and they're not. Their focus is not on building a winning program anymore. Their focus is on just being able to last another year
or another day.
Yeah, or another day, and that is not. That's not you're almost digging your own grave. That is not the way that you want your organization to be run. The ownership really is the problem for the Bears. I think that when I do my deep dive, which it probably won't be out for another month, but when I do my deep dive on the Bears, my guess, my hypothesis going in is that the ownership is really going to come to light as being the biggest problem in Chicago.
And isn't it always, right? In other words, we see it all the time, right?
It very much tends to be, yes.
Because if you're the general manager of a franchise and the owner is like schizophrenic, you need to make a move immediately just to save your career. I mean, look, at the end of the day, these guys are getting paid and they've got a family, and it seems like fantasy land to us, but these are real guys with real problems and real car payments and real mortgages and, real alimony or whatever the hell they got going on. And, they want to keep that job. And if the owner is not in lockstep with them, they're going to have a real hard time making sound decisions along the way. And we see it time and time again in all these, teams and the ones where they are, Bob Kraft and Bill Belichick. There was no sweat and no problem last year. They had their plan. They moved forward. And when you see teams like the Bears and, obviously the Texans and others, that's exactly what it is. It always comes down to ownership. And you've pointed that out along the way in both of your takedowns. I mean, owners were certainly not, escaping your wrath.
Yeah, we've done three. The first one was the Browns, and very much highlighted Jimmy Haslam. And I think that Jimmy Haslam maybe has come around a little bit. Every time that you think that a bad owner has come around, they do this dance like every 3 years in Washington with Dan Snyder. For the last 2 decades, they've been doing this. Oh, maybe he's not involved in the football decisions anymore, and then it comes out that he literally handpicked Dwayne Haskins. In Cleveland, it seems like maybe Jimmy Haslam is coming around a little bit, but at the time, he was a major problem. He was like pitting guys against each other in the front office. Joe Banner and Mike Lombardi could not work together, and then Sashi Brown and Hugh Jackson could not work together. And then with the Giants, I think it was very clear when we did that deep dive that John Mara was a major problem. And then with the Texans, their ownership has been very problematic, from Bob McNair to now his son Cal McNair. Just these young kids that like inherit the team from their dad. They're not often prepared to make like tough decisions, and when you're an owner, you have to make tough decisions year to year.
Yeah, so you could be the transition king right there, because speaking of owners' sons who've taken over franchises and maybe not made the most optimal decisions, the Raiders, dismantling their offensive line, trading all of their valuable pieces on the offensive line for, I think, a cumulative of a 3rd and 5th round pick, getting no cap relief, and then signing Kenyon Drake seems like the way to go, don't you think?
Yeah, that was strange to me. I mean, this is a team that you could argue. Well, even last year, I think you could argue that the Raiders had a top 10 offensive line, if not top 5. There were times where I thought that they had a legit top 5 offensive line. I didn't expect them to be as good as they were. Tom Cable has like never ran productive offensive lines, but they were very good last year, at times dominant, and now it has been dismantled. And that's not a good recipe for Derek Carr, who is a player that is much better when he's protected. Doesn't like to have guys around his feet. Needs like 3 to 5 yards of space between him and any defender. And then, I mean, Derek Carr can be pretty efficient in those scenarios, but it looks like they're headed in the wrong direction for sure, with all the losses, the cuts that they've made. Their offensive line is a huge question mark right now.
Right. I mean, and we've had some fun here talking about a few teams and a few spots, but let's talk about dynasty right here. I mean, talk about whether it's redraft, dynasty, best ball. I mean, this is not good for Josh Jacobs. This is not good for Kenyon Drake. This is not good for Derek Carr. This is not good for any of those receiving weapons. I mean, I suppose the receiving weapons will kind of get there, whatever, their targets are, whether they're in comeback mode or whatever, but I just don't like it for any of those offensive weapons. But especially Josh Jacobs right now, who, isn't necessarily a player who creates in space and through catching the football. I mean, he kind of needs a little bit blocked for him, because I mean, he's kind of a 2-down thumper. We all agree that he has a skill set past that, but I am not super excited about owning Josh Jacobs here going forward, especially with Kenyon Drake there to do exactly what, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's to an extent an indictment of Josh Jacobs that the Raiders went out and got Kenyon Drake. They were just like, we need to get another guy. I mean, Josh Jacobs, I think we can agree that he's good. I mean, he's a tackle breaker. We know he can play in the passing game. He just doesn't get those opportunities. But, he has dealt with so many nagging injuries over the past 2 years. He couldn't practice last year. And, it was kind of like a miracle that he made. I think he played in 14 games, or maybe even 15 the year before. He only missed 3 games. And I think he's good. But, again, you go back to his college career, he wasn't a true bell cow there. He technically played behind Damian Harris at Alabama. So, and it's hard to take a 270 carry pounding in the NFL for anyone. And, maybe that's he needs to be a guy that, gets 200 carries, not 280, and, is used more in the passing game. I've kind of lost my optimism for them to truly make a commitment to him in the passing game. One of the, the rhetoric surrounding the Kenyon Drake signing was that the Raiders are going to use Kenyon Drake in the passing game. So that doesn't bode well for Josh Jacobs either.
Not at all. And presumably fewer red zone, drives with that offensive line. It's not looking good. So I am definitely dubious of what they're trying to do there and what they did do. And while we were kind of getting together on this pod, there was one other one that signed, and I'll throw it at you. The Will Fuller to the Dolphins, and kind of what the Dolphins are doing. I don't know if they've done anything else since we kind of got on here. I've been prepping and getting my kids going and stuff like that. But Will Fuller on a 1-year deal, that's kind of perfect for both teams. Certainly, I mean, for both parties, both the team and certainly Will Fuller. I think he gets a chance to go there and and cash in if he can stay healthy and hide the steroid usage just enough to keep him on the field. What do you say there?
I mean, I love Will Fuller, and he's a true difference maker on the field. You look at the split stats of Deshaun Watson in his career when Will Fuller has been playing versus when he has not been playing, and Deshaun Watson averages like a yard and a half more pass attempts, almost 2 times as many passing scores. So Will Fuller is a difference maker, even in games where he's like dropping passes or he's not 100% out there. Just his field presence makes a big difference for the offense. And but at the same time, like the quarterback situation is still up in the air in Miami. I think if they are able to make a move for Deshaun Watson, Tua would probably be a part of that.
Right.
And then they have a ton of ammunition. I mean, they played their quote unquote tank perfectly. They did it in 2019. And the way that they were able to stockpile draft picks and get their salary cap right and at least take the shot on Tua. I don't know if he's going to be the answer or not, but I mean they're a talented team, a talented young team, well coached, with in very good salary cap position with a ton of assets. I think they're the perfect team to make a run at Deshaun Watson. Assuming that this lawsuit thing sorts itself out.
Yeah, as a Patriots fan, I do not like the way you're talking to me right now. So why don't you stop talking like that? No, I'm just kidding. I actually agree. The Dolphins make perfect sense for Tua. For Deshaun. They are a team on the rise. They've got good organizational structure right now. The front office and coaching staff seem to be on the same page. The offensive line is being built seemingly the right way. They do have draft capital. They can trade that early. They can give Houston their pick back, and give them Tua and who knows what else. But those two alone certainly are a good centerpiece of a gigantic package for Deshaun Watson. And I had a conversation with a fellow Pats fan on Dan on the last podcast, and I jokingly asked him, he's a Patriots fan. I said, dude, if you read tomorrow that the Patriots traded their next 10 first-round picks for Deshaun Watson, would you be upset? And he said no, and I kind of agree. Like, what's too much for that guy? Like, there isn't really anything that's too much because once you have him, if you have any sort of a team around him, you have a very good chance of winning. And without him, you don't really. So what the hell's the difference? Just go all in for this kid. If it's Tua, that pick, and 2 or 3 other firsts, really, who gives a shit? Just push it all in and go for it.
Yep, I'm with you, man. With you. And
let's go.
Awesome reuniting Deshaun Watson with Will Fuller and Devontae Parker and Gesicki. I mean, we're talking about maybe I should put a futures bet on the Dolphins right now to win the Super Bowl just in case they get Deshaun Watson.
Absolutely. What are their odds? Let's look it up. Live betting right now.
I don't know. I will look it up right now.
Yeah, look it up
right now. Have you bet any? You bet any futures yet?
Just the Redskins, baby.
Okay, yeah.
I'm half kidding. Football team. Good friend of mine's a Redskins fan, and he did place a $100 bet. I think they were a huge underdog to win, and I don't remember exactly what they were. They were over 60-1, I believe. So it's a pretty nice score. For
I took them to. I took them to win the division. It was 3-1. I mean, first of all, to win a division, all you got to do is finish first out of 4 teams.
Right.
And when the teams that you're competing against are, the Giants, the Eagles are very much in a state of transition. I think they might actually do a short-term tank. And then, I mean, the Cowboys are dangerous. The Cowboys are the favorite in the division. But, I mean, at plus 300, 3-1, just to finish first out of 4 teams, like, that was a no-brainer to me with Washington.
Well, you saw my show sheet sent over to you. I had Washington football team. Sorry, I don't mean to call them Redskins. My apologies. I'm an old guy. But you saw Washington football team. Do you think they're the favorite in the East, in the NFC East? And so you can see that we're on the same page there. I think with that defense, while you're looking up, with that defense, the defensive front, and now weapons all over the place. Curtis Samuel, oh my God, you're getting me excited. Ryan Fitzpatrick able to sort of be that wild card. If they're down, I mean, who better to have it chucking around than Fitz, you know?
Yeah, Washington is 50-1 to win the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl's tough. I mean, it's still Ryan Fitzpatrick.
I know.
They're going to be a fun team. They're going to be a fun team. The Dolphins are at 28-1. I think that's fine. And shoot, if they get Deshaun Watson, I mean,
it's
I bet
10-1.
To like 12-1.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, yeah. They go to 10 or 12-1. Absolutely. It probably higher than 12. The number probably should be 12, but the excitement would get them down to 8 or 10-1.
Yeah. I agree. Yep.
So let's do it.
I just put a little something on
that. Live betting. You heard it here first on the pod. The Degenerates, this is the Degenerates pod too. I openly welcome all degenerates to listen and to participate. Now you can see why. We just go straight to, good ideas. We bet it. We're on it. So let's move along here. You got. All right. We've covered all the negativity. Now let's talk about the positivity. We were talking a little about the Redskins. I thought the Patriots were another team that, did some stuff that I'm a Patriots fan and I loved Jonnu. I loved that. And then when they did Hunter Henry, I was a little confused. Aguilar, I'm not I think when it came right down to it, if I had to figure out what the hell they were doing, I think that they had Aguilar as a cut above. It must have some of these other players like Corey Davis and and some of these others, other than maybe Galladay and maybe just Galladay, because
and Corey Davis has whipped them. I mean, Corey Davis has beat up on the Patriots historically.
Yeah, like the old Wes Welker reason they traded for Wes Welker. He kept killing him, so he traded for him.
That's right.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
No, I mean, I think that last year, realistically, if you were to rank where their roster ranked in terms of talent across the league, probably in the 20 to 27 range.
Yeah, I was going to say bottom 5. I mean, offense was just putrid. They had no quarterback play. I mean, they couldn't push the ball down the field. They had 0 tight ends. Their running backs, their running back room had to have been in the bottom 5. I mean, in total talent all the way through. James White, whatever. I mean, so yeah, they just didn't have any pop. They had no speed. They had nothing to push the ball down the field. Their quarterback couldn't throw it down the field if they had that speed, but they didn't. So all the safeties were playing up. I mean, they had no chance. The only way they could win was in a rock fight. And their defense was good. Their secondary was good, but their front could get pushed around. And so they really had a hard time, competing in a rock fight. Yeah. This year, I think with their additions on the front,
they actually might have been. They actually might have been worse than 20 or 27. I agree with you. It was probably like 25-29.
Yeah.
So can they I mean, well, let me ask you this as a Patriots fan, because Cam went into last season with questions about, was he ever going to be as good of a runner? And also, would his arms stay on because it had fallen off, the previous 2 years at the end of the season. He answered questions that, he's still a really good athlete.
Totally.
Right? I mean, he finished third among quarterbacks in rushing yards. He led all quarterbacks in rushing TDs. But can he get that? And God, we saw that flash in week 2 against Seattle. He looked so good, man.
So good.
But then it was, and he also got COVID, and he said that really threw him off. So, but now with the full offseason under McDaniels, under Belichick, let's assume that they don't get any other quarterbacks that are, of note. Do you think that he can, with the addition of Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, et cetera, can Cam Newton, be revitalized as a passer?
I mean,
is that within his range of potential outcomes?
It has to be, right? Because he's done it before. The problem we have, and you're right, that Seattle game, I remember watching it and thinking, we're here. This is it. This is all we need. Because Belichick can coach, through some of his shortcomings, which is accuracy and whatnot. But later in the year, when he just looked like, just to make the joke, it looked like the ball was a little bit overinflated. No, I'm joking. It looked heavy though, right? It did look like it had something else in there that was like he just, Phil Rivers sort of threw it that way sometimes, where it looked like it was like a 20-pound ball sometimes, and Phil Rivers would get it there, of course. He was really good at delivering, as his wife will tell you. But Cam just had a hard time getting the ball, with any sort of velocity anywhere, and it looked really bad. So if his shoulder is bad, then all bets are off. But if he can somehow, I don't know what's wrong with this. I'm not a fucking doctor, but like if he can get that thing strong where he can just put just average amount of zip on it, like literally league average arm strength, then I think of course they have a shot because they've got the two great tight ends. They can play that sort of RPO game. I don't know if they've been linked to both Carson and Connor, I think, but at least Carson a little bit. So I think they're looking for a little bit more like, Fournette. That was the other one they were linked to. So Carson and Fournette. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I know. I'm going to get there. Hold on. I'm getting there. But I think they absolutely have the ability to get there. I mean, obviously they're going to swing and miss on some wide receiver in the draft, and I'm excited for that. See who that is. But other than that, I mean, yeah, I think they shored up a defense where their secondary was really strong, but now it looks like the front with Van Noy and others. I think that they're going to be better up front, obviously with Judon. So yeah, their defense could be definitely top half, if not top 5-10. Yeah. And if they can play that way, then they can win the rock fight.
With Cam, and I admit that I'm always looking for signs of optimism, just reasons to be optimistic about Cam. Adam Levitan and I go back and forth on Cam. And I mean, he was pretty much right last year about Cam, and I was wrong. Not that I was super, super high on him, but I liked him as like in the top 15. And, Adam just hates anybody that he considers to be old, even though Cam Newton isn't actually old.
Like 32.
He's 31.
31.
He turns 32 in May.
Right.
But if you look at his raw numbers last year, and you don't look at touchdown interception ratio, which we know is kind of a flawed stat. Obviously, it matters a lot for fantasy. But if you look at, 7.2 yards per pass attempt, that is not a bad number for him over the course of his career. 83 passer rating is not terrible either. 66% completion rate. And, again, the rushing statistics that he brought to the table too.
Right.
I don't know. Again, I'm looking for. That was the lowest yet. We know that TD rate is super, super volatile. In having studied this stuff over the years in fantasy, his TD rate was 2.2%, which is just completely abysmal and probably largely a reflection of his supporting cast. And now his supporting cast,
yes,
right, that's a weapons deal. And now he's got two stud tight ends that both have good histories in the red zone. I do still think that they need another vertical presence. Like I would have loved to have seen them sign John Brown. I don't think that Aguilar is truly that guy. He's got some speed, but I don't think he's truly a vertical receiver.
Yeah, I totally agree. I do listen to your pods, and I specifically listened to the one you did with Levitan just before this one, and you made my ears ring because the Patriots are sitting there at 15. They've got a few assets. They have Cam Newton in tow. If I were looking to build an offense around Cam Newton and or a younger quarterback that's just like Cam Newton, at least to some degree, I would be targeting Trey Lance in this draft. And if there was a way that I could move up to get Trey Lance and have him play behind Cam, and if Cam gets hurt or just can't perform, you just shove him in. But if you can wait, maybe let Cam play this year out, let the sort of quote unquote raw prospect of Trey Lance learn the NFL game, learn the ropes 1 year and play him next year. I think that would be optimal. And then you don't have to change your whole offense. So I heard you say it, so I already know you agree, but tell everybody a little bit about why you think that's such a great match.
Pretty much for all the reasons that you just lined out. The biggest knock on Trey Lance is that he only had 17 college starts. One of the knocks on Cam Newton coming out was that he only had, I think, like 13 starts. He was only a 1-year starter if you don't count junior college. But oh man, Trey Lance, just the toolbox that this dude has. I think he could still go as high as number 2 to the Jets.
Sure.
I think that he's that talented. And it would take quite a bit of ammo for the Patriots to move up for 15 to where I think that he's going to go. But they do have some pretty good ammo. I don't know. Maybe he'll end up falling. I don't know. I don't think that anybody has a truly good grasp on how the draft is going to go yet, especially since free agency hasn't even finished.
Exactly. But typically what we know is that the quarterbacks go sooner than we think they're going to go every year. And so this year we kind of think they're going to go sooner because we know that. And so we constantly keep pushing them up. I know I did an NFL mock draft in December, and I think I had 6 quarterbacks in the top 15. That's when we thought Kyle Trask might be good. Pour one out. But at the very least, we knew that those top tier quarterbacks are going to go at the top end of the draft for a couple of reasons. Number one, there's a lot of quarterback needy teams at the top of the draft. So, I mean, of course they're going to be looking for quarterbacks when those roles are reversed and guys just, maybe you just drafted a Darnold last year. You're not going to replace him the next year. But at this point, the Jets are ready to cut bait. And, so there's a lot of those teams, we thought maybe the Falcons were going to be one of those teams. And that was actually a popular landing spot for Trey Lance. But with them pushing, the Matt Ryan money out for, I think it's like 3 years now, they're going to be on the hook. Like he's playing for the Falcons for the next 3 years, or they're in major trouble, against the cap. So they're probably not taking a quarterback now where I thought they might. So there's a couple spots that may move, but there's just a ton of quarterback needy teams at the top, and maybe even some surprise ones too. Oh, breaking news. Actually, we do have some breaking news, Mr. Silva. Number one, a big wide receiver. 2 of the big name wide receivers have changed teams. Brashad Perriman has moved teams, as well as Keelan Cole to the Jets. Keelan Cole to the Jets is obviously an earth mover. He'll be taking over the wide receiver 1 chair there over Corey Davis, Denzel Mims, and Jamison Crowder. So, go trade for Keelan Cole in Dynasty. Am I right?
No.
Sorry. Bad advice. Wrong podcast. But seriously,
no. But it does give them some solid depth. I mean, this was a team that struggled with wideout injuries all last season. Keelan Cole can theoretically play all 3 receiver positions. He was primarily a slot receiver last year. There have been some rumors that they might cut Jamison Crowder. They should not do that. Jamison Crowder is a really good slot receiver. I mean, he's given them great snaps when he's been healthy.
Totally agree.
I think their 3 receiver set has a lot of potential on paper with Corey Davis, Denzel Mims, and Jamison Crowder. And I think Keelan Cole will be an excellent number 4 receiver. I don't think you enter the season relying on him as your number 3.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, you look at Corey Davis, he's prototypical X receiver. I mean, he really is. And whether or not he's good or not, I don't know. It still remains to be seen. I'm sort of a slight Corey Davis truther. That Tennessee offense was never exactly perfect for his skill set. But at the same time, he showed flashes, but he was somewhat inconsistent. Was that because of the offense? Who knows? I mean, let's face it, he's not truly elite, but he may be better than he showed in Tennessee. And if there's target, competition there, in other words, if Crowder is manning the middle and Mims can stretch the field, dude is fast. He ran under a 4.4. I don't remember, 4.38, 4.35, something like that. Dude can blaze, and he's a big kid. So, I mean, if Mims can be sort of left free a little bit, that's some trouble. And, we talked a little bit about who they might bring in as their quarterback. I think it's going to be Zach Wilson. Whether that's a good thing, bad thing, or otherwise, I don't know what your thoughts are there. I'm kind of coming around to Zach Wilson. Every time I watch, some of his tape, he's got that electric arm that kind of gets it to the outside, the perimeters of the field. And I think with Mims and Corey Davis, that's kind of what you want. You want a guy who can get it there quick. The windows are somewhat small on the outside because of how far it is, and because of those big body clashers. But I think he's got that type of skill set, so it may be a good match for them. What are your thoughts there?
Well, they certainly need a quarterback to unlock the potential, because these are pure potential guys. Denzel Mims really, although I agree with you on his skill set, I thought he reminded me of Kenny Golladay coming out of Baylor, and then Corey Davis did have a really nice season last year, but he's also the path of least resistance for the defense, because A.J. Brown is just an absolute monster, and he's not going to have A.J. Brown playing across from him.
Bingo.
So it's a lot of in theory stuff here with the Jets receivers, and Herndon is another in theory guy
for sure.
So they need a quarterback to truly unlock. I don't know if it'll be Zach Wilson. I bet Justin Fields to go to them, just because I got it at 5-1, and Zach Wilson is like minus 350 to go number 2 to the Jets. So
well, there you go.
You don't bet on a guy to go number 2 overall this far out
No, I agree.
at minus 350. You take the longer shot.
I didn't know that
Yeah,
was the odds. I mean, that is crazy. I
yeah,
mean, I would
I
think
know.
it's closer than that. So I'm with you. I think the value is where you got it.
Right, right. But either way, they need a quarterback that is capable of unlocking those guys. And I think they're definitely taking a quarterback at number 2. No question about it. And they're just going to kind of see what they can get for Sam Darnold. I don't think that Sam Darnold's going to be the guy.
Right. There's been a little bit of Twitter media, leaks about Sam Darnold not being good and all this stuff. I don't know what that's all about. Maybe he's not good. I don't know. I've kind of been, notably higher on Sam Darnold than others. Citing his youth coming out, citing the gaze factor, which we know is real, citing a lot of things. Weapons not being very good, the offensive line not being very good. He really hasn't been dealt any advantages so far in the league. That doesn't mean he's good, but it certainly doesn't mean he's bad. What are your thoughts about Sam Darnold? Is there a shot, or is he just Josh Rosen 2.0?
He's not Josh Rosen 2.0. He's actually played well for stretches in his career. It's just I'm worried about his confidence. He's a guy that I think he's worse now than he was when he came into the league. 4 years ago, and that's like a little scary. And the seeing ghost stuff that's actually that's common football terminology like in the league. But
yes,
the fact how much that got played out over and over, and I'm sure that dudes are reminding him of that on the field, like when they're playing. He, as you mentioned, he's still really young, and I don't know, maybe a little immature. Shoot, who wasn't immature when they were 23, or 22 years old? So that's a lot to be put on that dude in freaking New York.
Yes,
and I think he definitely needs a change of scenery. I think he's a guy that might have a career path, sort of like Rich Gannon or even Ryan Fitzpatrick, who takes a while to kind of get it. Maybe has to be a backup for a while, but comes back. Because the skill set is there. There was a reason that he was drafted as early as he was, and maybe if he finds a better situation, he matures a little bit. But he's got to get out of that situation.
No doubt. At this point, it's I thought for a moment they could build around him and trade that number 2 pick for a treasure trove of assets. And I just think that ship has sailed. I think you're right. I think his mindset is not strong enough to carry that situation. And, it's kind of like Mariota even. Mariota, when, after the game last year with the Raiders, when he went out and balled, the interview with him, he revealed that he was a broken man. He literally said it. He was broken emotionally, physically, and here's this kid. How old is Mariota? 26, 27? I don't even know. Like, not that old. And he's talking about himself in the past tense in a way that, he's talking about himself in a past tense way that 27-year-old people don't talk about themselves, right? That he's had to go through so much. And so it's heavy, man. These guys get a lot of burden placed upon them, and we have to remember they're human. And like you say, when I was 22, I was not carrying the franchise of the New York Jets on my back with Adam Gase trying to lead me there. So that's a handicap. And so whether or not he's able to, change his scenery and find his way again, I certainly am rooting for him. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think the writing's on the wall. Is there anywhere you see him going? There's one other player I want to ask you about too, but is there anywhere you see him going where he could actually get a chance at a starting role? He's not going to be traded as a starter, that we know. But is there anywhere you see him going where it's like, hey, he might be able to compete?
I was thinking Washington for a while, but I'm not sure. I think that their depth chart might actually be set with Fitzpatrick and Kyle Allen and Heineke.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe still the Bears. I truly believe he needs to go be a backup somewhere, sort of like Mariota. And I think that's a very nice parallel. I don't know exactly where that might be.
Yeah, I'm not either. I'm not sure either. And when you try and think about it, you sort of start running through the list of spots, and you're like, nope, right. Nope. And the same thing could be true about Gardner Minshew. Obviously, the Jaguars will be selecting Trevor Lawrence at the top of the draft. I think I jokingly surmised last year that they benched Gardner because he was too good. I mean, he's not so good, but he was too good for the number one pick.
Yeah.
And if they had played him all year, they might have won 2 or 3 games. So they were afraid to play his ass. And so now he gets to move on. And look, he's got everything that Baker Mayfield wish he had in terms of moxie and gravitas and all that bullshit. But, he might actually be a good little football player too. He's also young. Is there any chance he finds his way into a competition anywhere in the NFL as well? Because, I mean, someone's going to trade for him, right? Or are they going to keep him? What's going to happen with Gardner?
I don't know why they would trade him, because he's cheap and he's like a good backup. So it makes the most sense for them to keep him unless they're blown away with an offer. I think he just enters the season as the backup to Trevor Lawrence. And then if Trevor Lawrence gets hurt, then they've got a scrappy, nice little backup that can maybe move the ball in an offense that I think has got a lot of potential. Actually, they've got a good amount of talent on that offense. I like the signing of Marvin Jones, gives them some stability at wideout. DJ Chark, I think Trevor Lawrence is the kind of quarterback that could truly unlock DJ Chark. Chenault, my goodness, he reminds me of like Brandon Marshall when he came out of UCF in that first year, and you just saw the flashes, and all of a sudden he just exploded. If you can get Laviska Shenault in a dynasty league right now, I mean, I would try to get him, because he looks like an absolute monster.
Is Laviska Shenault their slot receiver? Like, do you know what I mean? Like.
I think that he probably is, actually.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I think Marvin Jones will play Z, Chark will play X. I mean, obviously they'll move guys around, but in general, I think he's their kind of like, which is kind of exciting is my point, because I think he's a guy that they can, run jet sweep, run little wide receiver screens, bubble screens, all these sort of fun things. And, I saw someone mention that, Trevor Lawrence threw the ball 23% of the time behind the line of scrimmage. In other words, either to his backs or, to wide receiver screens and things like that. So Shenault is perfect in that way. Obviously Chark is a downfield monster. Marvin Jones is a middle of the field maven, just to rhyme. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, but Marvin Jones does man the middle of the field. Chark is on the outside, and I think Shenault is that sort of do everything. And he's got great speed. I mean, we don't know what he has for speed because he was hurt at the combine, but let me tell you, he's fast, right? So I think who's their tight end right now? Is that a real question?
That's kind of the issue, is they really don't. They traded away Josh Oliver. Eifert is a free agent, so I think James O'Shaughnessy is a free agent too.
Right.
So I'm sort of thinking that they might run a lot of 4 receiver sets. They've got Colin Johnson too,
right,
who kind of flashed some jump ball ability. He's a huge dude.
Yes,
and adds another element to their their 4 receiver depth chart. But
he's a pseudo tight end, right?
Yeah, I mean, they might wind up playing a lot of spread. I mean, this is an Urban Meyer coach team that we're talking about.
So while we're on Jacksonville, we are going to swing back around. We got something else we got to talk about. But while we're on Jacksonville, I'm going to ask you a question or bring up a subject that I brought up on my Dynasty show many times, and that's the James Robinson situation. I think, you did. You mentioned it today, or I think it was the pod just recently with Levitan about Phillip Lindsay and about there was another undrafted back you guys were referencing, and you're like, damn, the NFL just hates Mike Boone. There it is. You're like, the NFL just hates these undrafted backs. They just don't give them the cred, yada, yada. And I know that to be true. And when I see James Robinson, I don't see an undrafted back, but that doesn't matter. He is an undrafted back. So for that very reason, he is fragile in Dynasty, just period. Like, you can just say he's undrafted, bing, he's fragile. That's that. Now, they brought in Carlos Hyde. That is the best news that they could have ever made for James Robinson, because Carlos Hyde is washed. He's not good. He's old. I mean, he's not going to take any meaningful carries away from James Robinson. But that does now open the door for them to potentially, if they'd have brought in Jamal Williams, I'd have said there's no way they're going to spend a top, 3-round draft pick on a running back. But with Carlos Hyde there, it does open the door for them to get a little greedy in the draft. And a lot of people will say to me, well, why would they do that? They already have their guy. And I've always referenced they have too many picks. They have a lot of picks. They've got like They've got like 5 picks in the top 70 or something like that. Like they've just got too much capital where they could feel compelled to spend one of them on a luxury pick like a Najee Harris in that early first round. They have that pick 33. They come out of the, if someone's sitting there like Najee Harris, they're going to wake up on, Friday morning and be like, we're getting fucking Najee Harris, bro. Like I can just see it happening. And so for that reason, but do you think that that's possible, or would you sort of go against me and say there's no chance they're doing that?
No, with that sort of pick allotment, then, there's a very good chance that they could be sitting there at, I don't know, say pick number 70, and they have, some running back as like their 35th overall player, and they're like, we can't pass on him.
Yeah, Jamar Jefferson, Chuba Hubbard, some of those guys. Yes, absolutely.
Right. So I think that I totally agree that Carlos Hyde, if somehow James Robinson can make it out of this thing with just Carlos Hyde being the single biggest addition at the running back position that the Jaguars make this offseason, and they don't take a running back until, I don't know, maybe like the 5th round, James Robinson, bye.
Yes.
But he is still hanging by a thread. I think he's still a sell in Dynasty, just because all that draft capital that the Jaguars had. It's somewhat noteworthy that Carlos Hyde played for Urban Meyer at Ohio State. But I still agree with you. I think at the end of the day, like James Robinson is going to outplay Carlos Hyde on the practice field, and therefore he's going to earn the vast majority of touches in the event that, again, the Jaguars don't take a running back in the first couple rounds.
Yeah. Carlos Hyde played for Urban Meyer. I think he was also drafted by Trent Baalke, wasn't he, at San Francisco?
Yes.
So
wow.
There's
nice pull, Jax Falcone. Nice pull.
Right. I mean, so yeah, this is a love affair. This is a little bit like they're crushed. They brought him in. They're dating now. This is getting serious.
Maybe that means they really do like Carlos Hyde, and then they won't draft a running back early,
right.
And then we can get the James Robinson experience back. I don't know.
That's right.
It's just, again, these, but it's still, it could go any way. I think still at the end of the day, James Robinson's probably a sell. And I think if you're trying to sell him in Dynasty, you sell him to your opponent on the fact that, hey, they just signed Carlos Hyde. He stinks. That James Robinson can be able to smoke.
The runway's clear.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. And look, the thing that I get a little bit weird about is like people like, no, he's good, man. James Robinson. I'm like, I know he's great. He's great. I see that. I think actually Phillip Lindsay, who I think you guys like as well. Yeah, I think Phillip Lindsay's good. Like he's tough as nails. That kid runs hard. He's quick, gets to the edge. He can catch the football. Like what is it that he doesn't do? Or even a better question, what was he not doing that Melvin Gordon was doing that they needed to pay his ass, $18 million to come in and do the same thing or worse, So I've just seen this movie over and over again where, they do something suboptimal just because it's the NFL, and so that was my fear with James Robinson. If you're holding him, he could turn into a pumpkin real quick. Najee Harris turns him into a pumpkin.
Oh yeah. I mean, if they get someone like Najee Harris, like that dude is going to be running the show in the backfield.
Right. And so that's a problem.
And James Robinson, and then they love Carlos Hyde and they trust Carlos Hyde. James Robinson ends up like inactive on game days. I mean, all these kind of scenarios are in play here. And that's why I think that James Robinson is still a sell, even though I think the best case scenario in free agency was for the Jaguars to sign someone like Carlos Hyde.
Yeah, I think you and I both agree here that the floor ceiling is very, very huge on James Robinson, because his ceiling in that offense, if they go to this spread and if they don't sign anybody meaningful, and if they, I suppose they could even still sign like Chris Carson. I don't suspect they will. I really don't, but they could. But as long as they don't, his ceiling is top 5 back in the NFL, in a fantasy purpose. And his floor is, like you said, inactive on a weekly basis, which, we would all lament. But there's something I want to circle back to, because we were talking real quick during our break, about Mitch Trubisky signing with the Bills, and he signed for like $2.5 million, $2.75, whatever it was. So just call it $3 million, just round up here. I mean, we both agreed without a question. And Michael, our producer, also was like 100%. If we were running the Bears, we'd rather have Trubisky at $3 million than Dalton at 10 or 11. Please just tell me again, what the hell are the Bears doing, or what is going on?
Again, they are a directionless franchise, where the decision makers are trying to keep their jobs, and they're not making, program building moves. It's also true, though, that Matt Nagy and actually Michael Wilbon said this publicly on the Rich Eisen show, and I'd heard it. I know some Bears beat writers, and they told me this before, that Matt Nagy just not a fan of Trubisky. For lack of better phraseology, doesn't think he's real bright, and never wanted to build an offense around Trubisky's strengths and weaknesses.
That was evident.
And I guess there was just no chance of Trubisky returning. I don't know. I like the move by the Bills. I think that if Josh Allen were to go down, like they could scheme an offense, because Brian Daboll has shown himself to be
Bingo.
very, very flexible. They could be highly competitive still with Mitch Trubisky at quarterback, or, surrounded by Steph Diggs and Cole Beasley and all the guys, the Gabriel Davis and Emmanuel Sanders, and a very good offensive line. I believe they're returning all 5 starters again. Great signing by the Bills. I love what the Bills have been doing these past couple of years. I mean, I think everybody has to appreciate that.
Absolutely. I mean, as a Patriots fan, I hate the Dolphins and Bills finally getting their shit together, but they are, man. And both teams are very hard to root against because they're doing it the right way. And last year during the playoffs, I was talking about Josh Allen. It's like, I'm supposed to hate this guy as a Patriots fan or whatever, I can't, man. It's like he's the coolest thing ever. It's awesome. Like, the Bills are so lovable. Everything they're doing is awesome. Love everything they're doing there. And you're right. Mitch Trubisky is a sort of a dollar store version of Josh Allen, right? I mean, at least they don't have to change scheme. I mean, they'll have to certainly dial it back a little bit. It's not as good, but he's mobile. He can run. He can escape. He can get loose. And he's kind of a bit of an X factor. I mean, he's had some huge games. I mean, he's been a milli maker. He's made people millions of dollars. Trubisky has done that, because if you're right, like on countless occasions, like 2 or 3 times.
If you make it simple for him,
right,
and you put design runs in the playbook for Mitchell Trubisky, which Matt Nagy hated doing,
right,
Mitchell Trubisky can move the football on offense.
Right, exactly. Nagy was running like Peyton Manning offense with Trubisky and frustrated that he couldn't do it. It's like, what an idiot. So I've got one for you. So this is coming from, I was thinking about some of the things I could ask you, and this one's my favorite question. So last year, Leonard Fournette, right? So you famously were pretty much the only one standing on the corner shouting with your sign like a crazy person on the street corner saying they might release Leonard Fournette. And everybody was driving by going, look at this wacko, right? Like literally everybody was roasting you saying no chance. I was, and so I'll be honest, I wanted to say that. However, I respected you so damn much. I was like, fuck, could that be right? Like, what the hell's wrong with Evan? Is he losing it or am I missing something? And sure as fuck, man, you were right on the money. So my question to you, first of all, congratulations, yada, yada. I'm not going to hear, we're not here to shine you. But the question is, and it's a fair one, did you have inside information or were you reading the tea leaves?
No, I was totally reading the tea leaves. I mean, they wanted to trade him. They tried to trade him. They literally couldn't get anything. No one wanted him. And then, that was evident again, when he got released because, I don't know. There were a couple teams interested, but what do you get, like 1 year, $3 million? I mean, I think it might have even been less than that. The Bucks got him for peanuts. I mean, he's not viewed, highly around the league. I think that is a reflection of his on-field play. He did it. He was solid in the playoffs. You got to give him credit for that. But he's long battled injuries. The stats that he accumulated in 2019 were, so volume based. I mean, that was not, he was not an efficient player. He has the agility of a tugboat.
True that.
And So I mean, he can be fine for short stretches. He's a replacement level volume back. They weren't interested in, I mean, he had no business being on that roster. They wanted to lose last year. The Jaguars
Right.
did a short term. The Jaguars did a short term tank. They did have incentive to play James Robinson. They did have incentive to play Divine Ozigbo and Raquel Armstead. That didn't work out for those guys for various reasons. But yeah, no, it was. I did not have inside information. That was to me. It was common sense. Like it was common sense.
Well, and that's why I respect you so much. So I motion.
And I got plenty of stuff wrong
Of
last
course,
year,
of course.
but
Look,
at least, but it is good when you don't have your best year. It wasn't my best year, but you do have something to hang your hat on still. So I will continue to victory lap that Leonard Fournette thing, where I can, and where it's I'm still trying to be respectful that this is it's very tough to be a good prognosticator.
100%. I have a saying, and it's called "Be ready to be wrong." Right. So, in other words, always be ready to be wrong. Like, be ready that you're wrong, so you can change quickly. So, as soon as you're wrong, you're not wrong for long. I'm a poet, and I don't even know it. You know what I'm saying? But what I'm saying is, be ready to be wrong. Know that you're going to be wrong about something. That way, you can be better. But you were right on that. I motion to change the word from tea leaves to Silva leaves. That's what I'm calling them from now on, because those fucking things are in your hands, man. Nice job. So moving forward now, I think you've answered the
Thanks. I
second.
wish I would have been right about it. I wish I would have. I wish that Hakeem Butler would have become something.
Ouch. Ouch.
Pour one out, man.
Yeah,
Pour
pour one
Yeah.
way the fuck out for Hakeem Butler, man. But that is actually one of those things where it's like late breakout, senior year domination, nothing else. Like, we got to look at that stuff. So, although I guess Brandon Ayuk did that a little bit too, but
True.
Brandon Ayuk was a junior. It's really hard. I mean, this stuff is not easy, and that's why you got to be ready to be wrong. But now with Fournette, so I think you answered my question that you don't think he'll have a meaningful role anywhere. I was talking about my Patriots with you, I think a little bit off the air or before, or maybe earlier in the show. I don't remember exactly when we hit it. And I mentioned Fournette, and you kind of gave me the. So you don't really think Fournette has what it takes to contribute in a meaningful way. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
No, no. I mean, I just think that he's just another guy
Sure.
in a league where there's a ton of running backs that are just another guy. He might be a little bit better than just another guy.
Sure.
But I mean, he's also likelier to get opportunities than later round drafted or undrafted guys just because of his draft status. That is true that follows you throughout your career for whatever reason in the NFL. Coaches remember, oh man, I watched Leonard Fournette on that LSU tape. And, I mean that dude could play back in the day. So
well, he was a
let's
size.
give him a shot.
He is a size speed specimen,
and
right?
he did have a good playoff run.
He did.
Yeah, yes, he is.
He's
Yes,
a
he
size
is.
speed
And
specimen
he
who
did
can
play
catch
well
the
in the
ball.
playoffs.
He can catch the ball, and that's valuable. But you're right. I mean, he has no agility. So, if there's someone in his way, he's either running over him or getting tackled. Those are the options, not going around him. That's not happening. But he's pretty quick, and if he gets into the open field, so I thought, the brilliance of why he was good in the playoffs was they used him properly. Like, they didn't ask him to sort of create on his own. It was all schemed up for him or in the passing game. And so that's where he's going to succeed, and they asked Ronald Jones, who has a little bit more of that pop and, wiggle, not much, but more to do that. And he was able to do that, man. Dude, I'll give Ronald Jones a lot of credit too, because I was not a big fan of his. He ran hard last year. I mean, he looked a lot better, but just in terms of Fournette, here in the free agency, I don't think he's signed yet. Obviously you'd prefer Chris Carson. Do you think Chris Carson lands anywhere meaningful, or is that ship sailed too? I mean, there's a few spots left where I think Chris Carson could save his fantasy value.
Yeah, maybe. I would like to see Chris Carson back in Seattle. That's the best spot for him.
True.
He's better than all the dudes that they have. Pete Carroll always loved him. I think there was a clash between the front office and the coaching staff with regard to Chris Carson, because the front office wanted, their first round pick, Rashad Penny, to succeed. But I mean, Chris Carson was better than all those dudes. So I hope that Chris Carson goes back to Seattle.
Is Rashad Penny a thing?
I mean, it comes down to opportunity. If he's going to get the opportunity, right now it looks like he might get the opportunity, but I don't know. We haven't seen very many positive moments from Rashad Penny in multiple years in the NFL.
Just as he was starting to not break out, but maybe break through is the better term, he got hurt. And, I don't think Rashad Penny is necessarily an elite back, but he was an elite size speed specimen, right? Like, he was very big and very fast. And he showed that when he played for Seattle. What was it now? Jesus, 2 years ago. At late 18, early 19, I guess, but late 18, I think, if I'm mixing up my years, was when he sort of was like, popping some really big plays every now and again. He looked like the most electric back in that offense. And, last year, of course, was a complete washout. He wasn't able to get back in time, never really got on the field. So 20 was a washout. 19 is when he hurt himself. 18 was when, yeah, that's right. So I think, as he started to kind of get going, I heard some rumors that he wasn't exactly, I think, how do you say it? The sharpest tool in the shed or whatever. And took some time.
And he also has struggled with conditioning. I mean, he's like, he struggled with like keeping his weight in check. I remember watching him in college and liking him as a runner. And also he was a really good return man also in college.
Yes.
Which is always cool for like a 225-pound running back. That's pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, there have been a lot of problems with him from the I don't know about his intelligence, but I know that his conditioning has been a problem at times. And also, just health. I mean, he hasn't been able to stay on the field.
And I don't know about intelligence. I guess I'm just saying, like, not necessarily, the guy that's like gobbling it all up. Maybe he's a smart kid when it comes to science.
Maybe the Christine Michael. Christine Michael syndrome. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, there's certain guys who eat this up and live it, breathe it. AJ Brown, for instance. I don't know how smart AJ Brown is, but dude doesn't miss a moment of learning about football. Like, he just can't stop. Yeah. Like, he just can't. His body won't let him. Like, he's just sick. So you see a guy like that, like whoever, and then he's got the body too. I mean, we can both say AJ Brown is awesome. Yeah, I've heard you. Did you quote him as Terrell Owens? Was that you that said that?
Yeah, that's who he is. Yeah.
I'm with you.
When he was coming out of Ole Miss, I compared him to Juju. That was after Juju's huge start to his career. But I think he's TO at this point. He's been better in the pros than I expected. And I loved him coming out of college. I think I had him as the number 2 receiver in that class. And
ouch. Well, hey, I missed my 101 too, because it was N'Keal Harry at wide receiver 1 too. So
God, dude.
Swing and a miss.
I mean, again, predictions are hard.
Yes.
No one ever said this would be easy, but I mean, even the NFL technically missed on AJ Brown because they let him go to the second round.
Right.
So
yes, exactly.
Vindicated.
Yeah, and it was funny too, because I had N'Keal Harry as my WR1, but the later it got in the I remember when the Patriots picked N'Keal Harry, I actually went, I wasn't exactly excited. I remember it was that moment I thought, oh yeah, I need to back off this N'Keal Harry thing. Like, I don't know what it was. Like, I tend to fade Patriots players just because, like, I'm too close emotionally. I'm like, I don't know. I just can't. So, but I remember thinking, like, this thing is not good. This doesn't feel right. I don't think this is going to work out. People were like, oh, great landing spot with Brady. I'm like, not sure about this one. So I ended up not owning a ton of N'Keal Harry, even though I sort of told the public to draft his ass. Sorry about that, guys. Thankfully my following wasn't as big then. So, but what I wanted to ask you, and this one's kind of fun. So, CEA, we saw in the Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes get absolutely, rushed. Like, literally, he'd get the ball and he'd immediately be on the run, just knowing that he had to move to some sort of space where he could find a spot to throw from. Like, literally every play. It was kind of awful, actually. It was really tough to watch. And we learned, or we relearned, how important offensive and defensive line play is. The Chiefs go out, they release their 2 tackles, obviously because Remmers is so good. No, I'm joking. But they release their 2 tackles because of cap situation. They bring in Thuney, who by all accounts is dope. And they bring in Kyle Long. My question to you is, does this Kyle Long move the needle? Is he still good? Like, I don't know. I'm not, he was good. Is he still good, or do we not know?
He wasn't good at the end of his Bears tenure, but I mean, he's had what is it 2 years off now?
Mm-hmm.
I thought that it was a funny tweet from Ross Tucker. He like broke down the Chiefs' offensive line situation right now, and it's like they've got no tackles, they've got no center, but they have like 6 good offensive guards. But Joe Thuney actually is capable of playing tackle. Kyle Long has played tackle before. But no, I mean, they've still got some sorting out to do on their offensive line. And another reason that they released those guys, though, too, Mitchell Schwartz and
Eric Fisher.
Eric Fisher was unlikely to be ready for week 1. He tore his Achilles in January.
Yeah, right.
And then Mitchell Schwartz had a back surgery a few weeks ago. So, and that's never good for an offensive lineman. I mean, doing the podcast with Ross Tucker for 5 years, he would always harp on that, fade dudes with back injuries. And it took me like 2 or 3 years to really get on the same page with Ross about that. But I mean, it hits every time. Fade the dudes with the back injuries. Mitchell Schwartz, like for all we know, could retire.
Right.
Yeah, so they've still got work to do on their offensive line, no question.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm wondering now, there's so many mocks with them taking a wide receiver, at that pick 31 or whatever it is. And you got to think they're going offensive line in the draft, don't you?
I don't know. Fade the pre-free agency mock drafts, though.
For sure.
You can safely do that.
Yeah. For sure. But I'm talking about like in your own mind. Like, I mean, if you're running the Chiefs, I mean, you got to fix that line. I mean, that's just like job one, because really we know that Patrick Mahomes can win, which is the malpractice of drafting Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the first round last year. First of all, he wasn't the most, dominant back. He wasn't the best back there. I mean, we all know that. We knew that right from the get-go. But moreover, it's that Patrick Mahomes doesn't need that. Like, he doesn't need it. He can have any guy, like bring him Carlos Hyde and he's going to be just fine. Like it doesn't matter. So
no, I mean, if they had had Damian Williams last year, I mean, they would have been more than fine. I think they might have even been a little bit better.
Right. Yeah. I mean, well, he is more explosive. I mean, look, I got nothing against CEH. I mean, certainly I've memed him, mocked him, gifted him, the whole thing, but moreover, just as a playful way to, communicate with people because it's fun as shit. But the real answer is he was a top 6 or 7 back in that class. He's a good player. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a fine little football player, but he's not a first round running back talent. Like at this particular point, first round running backs need to. JT didn't go in the first round. Like you don't need to take a running back in the first round. So it was complete malpractice, in my opinion, when there are other elite assets on the board still. So yeah, I just think that team needs to focus on fixing its line on both sides of the ball, because that team is if they can rush the passer and they can protect Mahomes, that's it, game over. I mean, they're going to win the Super Bowl if they can do that. I mean, right? I mean, it almost doesn't matter who their weapons are. Granted, as long as Kelsey's there, and to a lesser degree Tyreek Hill, they're fine.
No, I don't think they have a problem with their weapons. So
right.
I think it's offensive line or defense.
Yeah. Well, I think that solves it for them. I was just kind of curious if Kyle Long could move out and play tackle still, or if he's just not quite there. But sounds like the jury is out for sure. I don't think Juju has signed yet, but
it's just going to be a situation where they sort out the offensive line assignments, like in OTAs, assuming that there are OTAs. I don't even know if there are going to be OTAs this year. I am sort of suspecting that there will be like a limited version of OTAs, but that's when they're going to start to sort out where all these guys are going to play. I mean, Andrew Wiley is big enough to play tackle. Again, Kyle Long and Joe Thuney both have at least a little bit of experience at tackle. they're just going to sort it out on the practice field. But they need to. I mean, they need a center, and and they probably need to add another tackle at least just for insurance.
Is the Canadian doctor coming back next year?
Yeah,
I can't think of his name.
I haven't seen any finality on that, but I would assume that he's back. Yeah, I would assume that. I don't know. We'll see.
Right. So now we move to the wide receivers, where it's kind of interesting. All these receivers got locked up with the franchise tag. Godwin, Allen Robinson, and then it took a while, and it's still taking a while for Galladay. Fuller signs that 1-year deal. Kind of interesting to me, quite frankly, because he got about as much as Aguilar did. And Juju and Galladay are still out there, at least as of this moment. I just checked again, and maybe by the time we release this in an hour or two, it changes. But what do you think the reason is for the slow market on Galladay and Juju? Are they holding out for more money, or is there just less money than they thought? Are they playing the sort of, should we take a shorter deal and try and hit free agency? Is this sort of an agent's game, or what do you think is the reason? And then secondarily, where do you think they're going to end up?
Well, number one, with Kenny Galladay, it is I'm sure that he and his agent began free agency like targeting like $20 million a year.
Right.
So the money wasn't right. And also, I mean, this is a guy coming off a hip injury that cost him 11 games last season. So that's why you're seeing him take visits, which free agents generally don't do. But these teams want to bring him into their facility, put him in front of their doctors, knock on his knees and, make sure, see how truly healthy he is. And that's why his market has been so slow. I guarantee you he came out of the blocks like thinking that, hey, I'm going to get $20 million a year. And everybody's like, well, you got to come visit us. And, his agent's like, well, teams don't even do that anymore. But, the team's like, well, you got to come visit us because we got to knock on your knees and make sure that your hip is all right. And, et cetera, et cetera. So that I think that is fully explainable. The thing with Juju, and I hate delving into to stuff like this, but I would suspect that teams have some reticence toward Juju because he has this social media personality that maybe teams get worried has been taking away from his focus on football. And also, I mean, his career has been on a downward trajectory, and he's still very, very young. So I think that he's another dude that teams just want to, examine. Like they probably want to have a long sit down with him. It's not where just boom out of the gates. Hey, we're signing Juju. Like we need to think about this.
Sure.
And I'm sure that he's also another guy that probably came out of the gates thinking that he might get, I don't know, $12 to $15 million a year, and teams are probably like, no,
right. Yeah, and probably thinking like 4 or 5 years with most of it guaranteed type of thing, like a right. Real deal, not just the Taysom Hill $140 million, the real $140 million. So yeah, I think that's probably right. It's probably the delta between their expectations and reality, and of course with the cap falling back, there's just less of that sort of quote unquote real money to be had. There's I think Nelson Aguilar's salary this year is $1 million. Is like, he's getting a lot in bonus, but his base salary is $1 million. In other words, there's a lot of funny money happening because of that 182.5, cap, which was a real problem for some teams. Obviously it was not a problem for teams like the Patriots, but I think that's exactly where it's at. It sounded like Galladay was kind of leaning towards, and they were leaning towards him, was the Giants. Do you still think that's where he ends up? And, or is it still totally up in the air? Cincinnati also a little bit.
I just don't know. Yeah, I just don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know. It's going to come down to the medical and the money, and I don't know.
I was hoping you had the Silva leaves there to look over and tell us.
No, I don't have that. I don't have that. You got to bring on Schefter for that shit.
Yeah, the Schefter leaves are even more powerful. I will give you that, brother. That dude I don't know if you've ever seen the sort of quick bio of him where he's got like 3 cell phones, they're all ringing at the same time. He's texting, he's raising his kids, and like that kid is out of control. He's like 5'2". He's crazy. That dude is awesome. He's fantastic.
I mean, he's like the best reporter. He's the best reporter on the planet. I don't, include all the political guys, include all the, Adrian Wojnarowski is really, really good too. And
yes.
It's maybe a competition between those two, but Schefter covers a more popular sport and is
there's
on
more
top
players.
of everything. As far as there's way more players. He's the best actual, journalist / reporter on the planet.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. He's unbelievable. And, really you could just follow Schefter. I mean, we literally do. I mean, we talk, we just put on the Schefter feed and just refresh. You're going to find out the information you need right there. It's like you don't even need anything else. You just need Schefter in your life. So, yeah, I'm with you 100%. He's awesome. Let's do this. This one's my favorite. I'm sort of a Kamara fan, and if they're going to run that Taysom Hill offense, Kamara hurts him. His value goes down big time. If they run the Jameis Winston offense, his value is right there, if not going up, because they'll throw a few pick sixes. They'll be right back on the field, dumping it down to Kamara, throwing it up to Michael Thomas. But I actually have this sneaking suspicion that it's going to be kind of, and Sean Payton would be the guy to do it. He has enough, capital to do this. He has enough, gravitas to do this. He has enough creativity to do this. He's shown a propensity to do it in the past. Even with Breeze, he'd bring in Taysom on certain third downs. I really think it's going to be a true 2-quarterback system there. And this is just my prediction from, from this seat. I don't know. I've just seen enough of the Silva leaves with them in the past where I think they're going to go ahead and just kind of, whether it's game plan, whether it's game situation, if they're down 2 touchdowns, Winston will be in. If they're running the ball out, it's going to be Taysom Hill, goal line situations, yada, yada. Hot hand, whatever it might be. I just think you're going to see a very healthy 2-quarterback rotation. Am I crazy, or do you think I'm onto something here?
I mean, Sean Payton has already shown the willingness to essentially do that, pulling Drew Brees, a surefire first ballot Hall of Famer, off the field in scoring position in
right.
favor of Taysom Hill.
Bingo.
So that should not surprise anyone. I think they both end up making starts in 2021. I think it's a fade the entire offense situation.
Ouch.
I think. Michael Thomas is not going to be a 100-catch guy anymore. Alvin Kamara might be the guy that's able to survive, but he's not going to be an 80-catch guy anymore. I think even with Jameis, Jameis is never going to be as willing to check down as was Drew Brees. And Taysom Hill, we saw when Taysom Hill was in there, Alvin Kamara lost a lot of fantasy value.
No doubt.
And they're not going to be as they're not going to have 50 pass attempt games with Taysom Hill in there at quarterback, and they shouldn't with Jameis because he'll give the ball to the other team 3 or 4 times in those scenarios. He's not going to be surrounded. He's going to have a really good offensive line, but he's not going to have the Chris Godwin and Mike Evans and all the other guys that he had when he was in Tampa Bay. So. I think it's a fade the entire offense situation. Sean Payton is brilliant enough to make it work in real life, but in fantasy, I don't really want any part of this. Maybe some Adam Troutman. I wouldn't mind some Adam Troutman late if he can kind of make it through the rest of free agency and the draft. Well, just make it through free agency. I think they want him to succeed. They traded up to get him in last year's draft. And they've moved on from Jared Cook and Josh Hill. I mean, the path is cleared for Adam Troutman. Give me some Adam Troutman. You guys can have your Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara's.
The only thing I'll challenge you on Michael Thomas is his ass is slipping. He is going later and later.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I think a lot of value-wise, I think he might be good. But I agree with you. I think you're onto something. And you're right, though. The thing that I'm most nervous about in that offense is the uncertainty. If I'm right about what they're going to do, it's it was like the old adage of predicting the Patriots running backs. It was like, was it going to be a Blount game or a James White game? Now you could lean into whether they were favored or not or whatever. But point of the matter is you kind of didn't know. And, they could get into a shootout even though they were not favored, right? Or they were favored big, they get into a shootout. So same thing here. You could be like, oh, I think it's going to be a Taysom Hill game, but you may be fucking wrong, And so I think a lot of that, look, last year, Kamara, as soon as Breeze went down, I told everybody Kamara's going to be, really relegated because, and it's not, a lot of people, I kept saying last year, it wasn't that Taysom Hill isn't like, it's not like he isn't looking for the check down. It's that they're running a completely different offense. They're not running the same offense. And then Taysom just doesn't look for Kamara. They're running read option. They're running, they're running a different system. And so therefore Kamara's receiving ability isn't part of that game plan. And so as long as Taysom Hill is playing, Kamara is hurt, and if Jameis is playing, maybe it's not quite as good as Breeze, but I think it's close enough because he's going to have to throw the ball a shit pot because, like I said, he's going to throw 6 touchdowns a game. It's just to which team.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
The first one usually goes to the other team. He likes to set it up, spot him 7. Just degree of difficulty and go from there.
Isn't that good in fantasy? That's the best in fantasy when your fantasy quarterback starts the game off with a pick 6 on drive 1.
Yes.
Let's fucking go. We're headed to the top.
Yes, dude. I love it. I rode Jameis to so many titles that year. And it was just like literally it would be like he'd be -10 on the on the stat tracker or whatever you want to call it. And you'd be like, let's go, baby. It's going to be 30 for this motherfucker. We're going to lose 45-30 in real life, but he's going to put up 30 for my fantasy team. It is so bonkers with that dude. I absolutely love Jameis. I want him in my life. I want him on that field. But I'm afraid that Sean Payton is just too smart to like hand the keys.
He literally literally led the NFL in passing yards in 2019, and then in 2020 he was like a third stringer.
Right.
Like,
It's
that's
incredible.
kind of amazing.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. What was I think the first pass of his career was a pick 6. I think that's correct. And like the last pass he threw in the NFL in 19 was a pick 6. So yeah, it's just like, yeah, he's bookending pick 6s, and yeah, he's the king. I absolutely love him. Hey, is there anything else you kind of want to touch on? I know that we're kind of jumping around a bit, but is there anything you wanted to mention right now? Or
No, I gotta get some work done. I got another podcast to do on this Jets podcast, and I gotta try to give them some hope for the season. But no, man, it was so fun to podcast with you. I'm glad that we did it, Jax, and let's do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to have you back on, and thank you so much for doing this with me. And again, if you're following me on Twitter, if you're listening to this podcast, and you don't know who Evan Silva is, just stop following me altogether. I mean, that's just ridiculous. But go out and follow Evan Silva. He literally is kind of my sort of spirit animal. Like he worked his ass off to get everywhere he is. And, everything he's gotten in this business has been through hard work. He's worth following. He's worth listening to. He's super smart. He's nice enough, but he comes with the takes, whether you like it or not. And I love that about him. I just fucking love the dude. So thank you so much for being so kind to me, coming on this pod and sharing all your knowledge with us. We absolutely love it, and thank you so much. Everybody can find him on Twitter at Evan Silva, establishtheRun.com. His podcast is excellent. Adam Levitan, absolutely fantastic. So for all of us at The Undroppables, for all of us at The Undrafted, including my producer Mike and Don Mega, who puts together all the videos, thank you so much, Evan Silva. Have a great day. Peace out.